Okay, I'm gonna open the episode, okay?
Yeah. Hello and
Hi.
welcome to episode
I'm the
3.
host. Hey!
Okay, sorry.
I'm the host.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're the screenwriter. Hello and welcome to Plot Matrix. This is episode 3 of our follow-along screenwriting podcast. And today we are getting into the details, the specifics, the logistics and semantics of the Linwood Treasure Company.
The company or the movie?
The company.
The company. We're getting right into
The
it.
last episode, we did all the brainstorming, laying things out. This episode, we're going to talk specifics, the origin story, the agenda, how the treasure hunt actually works to try to lay out the foundation, the structure of the story.
Yeah, and I think where this is going to apply to the rest of the script is by having this timeline of how the company itself came to exist, rose to prominence, and what it has turned into today. A lot of it may not make it into the final script, but for our own knowledge is going to help inform everything that our contestants do. And I think now we also are hitting a turning point in the podcast where the first 2 episodes were definitely a bit more generalized.
Yeah.
And first episode especially, but last episode was just getting, the beats, getting the feet wet. But I think today is really where we're going to start developing a lot. And part of that process is we're not, and by we, I mean you and I, Jackson, we're not going to agree on everything. And there are going to be some moments probably where maybe we're a little confused or we're just trying to clarify for ourselves. But every episode will come back having cemented, at least partially, what we've talked about in the episode previous.
Right. Nothing is ever locked just because we say, all right, here's our assumption for moving forward. It doesn't mean that you can't make an argument to the contrary in the comments.
Yeah. And we're always following along. We're looking to see what people are adding and what they think will make the story even better.
Yeah. It's just that if we don't start writing things down and saying this is what we're doing, then we're just going to be in a brainstorming session and, we're not going to advance the storytelling. But where we want to be around episode 5 or 6, 7 is where it's easier to have guest writers come on and make contributions because there's something to work with on the table.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
So, Jackson.
Yes.
Where's Linwood from?
Where's Linwood from? Okay, well, so the origin story, I mean, I don't want this dynamic where I have the right answer
Totally.
but I can tell you what I always had in mind.
Okay.
Part of this is probably my Anglo-centric image of what treasure hunting has looked like in media. But I think I chose this Anglo name of Linwood just because I imagine it as being some English rich lord who maybe put on this treasure hunt for other rich intellectuals or wannabe intellectuals in England. Think sort of Industrial Revolution area, the 1800s.
So we're looking at a long stretching history.
Yeah, just long enough that it can feel like it has that institution quality to it. And I picked Linwood Treasure Co. Just makes it sound like it's this old school legacy institution.
So competition 1, sorry to interrupt, but competition 1 would have been something like 5 friends.
Casual.
5 wealthy friends with maybe 3 or 4 clues going around either their local area or maybe, it would be obviously if it's the 1800s, it's a lot harder to travel globally.
Yeah.
But something where it would be still a difficult and expansive treasure hunt, but not nearly to the degree of what Linwood Treasure Co. is today.
Yeah. And so throughout its history, it has had this growth and these expansions. And more and more contestants are being involved. And then, like any growing institution, there's evolving rules and regulations to kind of keep the sport alive and evolving. There's still going to be that element of opaqueness. I don't think they have an ironic TikTok account and a PR team, like I've said.
Silence brand.
Silence brand. So yeah, Linwood is not like that. They're opaque, right? And I think that their origin story would lay the foundation for sort of this elevated, pretentious quality to the company.
It's funny how at the beginning, seeming like with this grand history and being so old, it feels just innately very pretentious. But the idea that I have in my mind now is not as snooty by having so many more competitors.
Okay.
So it definitely now to me feels a little bit more chaotic and still, as we had talked about, a little bit less gamesmanship, a little bit less fun involved because it is turned into an actual industry. Whereas the beginning, as it seems to me, feels while there was money on the line, it's no different than, making a March Madness pool with your friends and all chucking in $5.
You lost fair and square. I'll
Okay,
just
yeah,
remind
sure,
you,
whatever. This is
right?
okay.
I've, as a courtesy to you, I've tried to like allude to your other ideas, but I don't really want to hear it.
Okay, sure. But the point stands where you get a couple of your friends, you all chuck in $5, and the winner walks away with $25. And yeah, it's about the money, but it's about the pride because it's the close knit friend group aspect of it.
Yeah.
But now it seems that over this almost 200-year history of Linwood, it's lost that overarching sense of pride, and it is seemingly focused just on the money.
Right. Well, I think that there's been ways that it has sort of evolved. But before we get to the evolution, let's just, if one of our objectives of this episode is to set some things in concrete a little bit on the origin story, let's say that Linwood is the last name of the founder.
Yep.
It started with a small group of rich friends, and Linwood fancied himself a game master, let's say, an intellectual. They were a big fan of chess. They studied mahjong and like.
I'm a big chess guy myself.
Oh, you are? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I'm a
Okay.
big Evans Gambit guy. Best opening in chess.
Evans Gambit.
Yeah, it's where you
Okay.
immediately sacrifice material for a positional advantage. You didn't expect me.
Could be some good. I didn't expect you to know.
You didn't
I
expect me to
didn't
just
think
whip
you
out
knew
some.
how to play chess.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
On
all right,
chess.com, I'm 1400 in 3 minutes,
well, okay.
which is really not impressive at all. I honestly get clapped most games. But,
Okay.
I consider myself a modern Mikhail Tal.
Great. You could have made that up, but great. Well, then there's probably some like allusions from chess, or I would think that Linwood, even though that there's this whole money element to it, I would think that the founder, because of how they fancied themselves a game master, and they thought of themselves as a student of the history of gaming and sportsmanship and games like intellectual games like chess. I think that agenda has held true as one of the tenets of Linwood throughout history. And the game master, whoever it may be after Linwood, has tried to carry that torch forward, basically on 3 different levels. On the surface, there's the money. That's why people compete. But then the second layer, they say that they are in it for the sportsmanship, intellectual gaming, right? Or it could be the travel element could be involved, let's say. But then the third layer is manipulation.
As all good
Linwood
competitions have.
Yes. Linwood was a master manipulator, and he really dominated over his friend group, pitting them against each other. And basically, however he designed it, even though he held up his hands at the end, right? He's not an active agent in the participation in the treasure hunt, but however it was designed, basically set up the competition for manipulation or whatever. So I think that's like the third layer, that the like darkest way to read Linwood and its origin story. Is that all sort of agreeable? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you mentioned this term a few times now, and I feel like this might be the next course of discussion, which is the game master. So obviously with Linwood becoming a company, right, and continuing this on, there would be at some point where it transitioned from this singular person doing this for him and his friends, and then turning it into that actual industry itself.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say game master, do you mean like a president of the company? Like there had to be a point where they decided to turn this into like a legal entity of wherever they're from, whatever it is, and then bring on somebody new as the person to design and really point the vision of this treasure hunt.
Yes. So even though the company is opaque, the game master would be the most public, I imagine them to be, just because the game master is somebody that changes over time, and whoever's the like CEO of the company or the business entity isn't nearly as important as the designer. I don't know if what the sports analogy might be.
Commissioner.
The
It's the
commissioner.
league commissioner. So in the NFL, it's Roger Goodell. The NBA, it's Adam Silver. It's that just person that you look at as kind of being the face of the business side of the league, which includes things like rules or the way that the
Okay.
salary cap works, or they're just that face and definitely that person that has a lot of pull and definitely makes decisions, but they're the one entity of what represents the higher ups.
Right. Yeah. So I think that the game master is still, if they are on camera at all, it's through very meticulously curated public announcements, not like a press event or something. I don't think that there's like engagement there, just because I want there to be this air gap, this like uh big wall between the competitors and the actual thing, and all of the interactions they have with Linwood are sort of archaic and pretentious. So the game master, I think, is this indirect character, this looming figure.
How often do you see the game master being something that cycles? Is it sort of like a lifetime type thing, like the Pope? Is it
Hmm.
like a voting on by the board? Is there a possibility that if something goes wrong, then the game master shifts? Because part of what I'm thinking is, the way that sports commissioners usually change is after a pretty decent amount of time, they'll host the interviews, or they do. I actually don't know the full on process that goes into picking a commissioner, but they will go through a big selection process, and it almost marks a new era in the leagues. The leagues are often referred to as the commissioners league.
Okay.
So I wonder if, what would the process look like to you of how these commissioners are chosen, or excuse me, how these game masters are chosen?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely eras to Linwood, I'm sure. Even though that I think that they like to think of themselves as insulated from public uh tensions, public relations. Um, I think that things will certainly have gone wrong. I mean, it's going to be a storied history of um, stories of violence and controversy. I don't really know much about how the Olympics work, but I assume they're similar with whatever the equivalent of the Olympics commissioner is. But I think that every new game master would definitely change eras
Okay.
and change how the game works, and change how who wins. A new game master could change the game for the year of our Lord, the year of our treasure hunt that we're going to follow. It could have a new game master, and no one really knows yet how it's going to go. But maybe this game master has a whole different approach to the relationship with cultures around the world, or um, intellectualism versus life experience, or the physical attributes, or um, they're trying to make it less resource intensive, or something. That's probably a later conversation, but
Totally.
like I think that in the lore creation, yeah, that there are these cornerstone events throughout Linwood's history corresponding to the eras of Game Master.
Yeah, and to build off and we will get into the incumbent in a different episode.
Yeah, probably next episode.
Most likely next episode, but I think it is important here. For me, you were saying that this might be a year of a new game master, but in my mind, I kind of see it as the final year of the previous game master. Where if we're looking at just one era, the beginning of this era would be where the incumbent first won and then rose to power, and this game master is time during all of that. And now this is the last competition underneath this final game master before we move on to a completely new era where nobody knows what's next. So
Okay.
they could be changing how the competition is even began or whatever. But I think what we have to choose between is either this is the final year of the current game master, or it's the first year of somebody who's brand new.
Yeah. I would lean towards new. I would say that like if we lean towards new, then something could have happened last treasure hunt that caused the previous game master to be fired. Like I've sort of kicked around this idea of the treasure maybe was never found last year or at some point in the history. But yeah, I would lean towards that.
Or that could be the invention of the courtesy team, where another idea that you kicked around is if somebody completely random had just found the treasure in the midst of this entire competition, somebody who hadn't entered, they had just found it.
Right.
And it could be the sort of thing where, in order to cover their tracks, Linwood Treasure Co. is like, oh, well, they found it, so we're actually going to introduce this whole new dynamic where we allow just one team to come in. And while that's what it looks like forward-facing, internally they're just axing the last game master and just moving on to a completely new era. Just trying to spin something that would be bad for them into, oh, look at this new change we're going to make to celebrate what has just happened.
This is where character traits start defining plot points. If we decide that a quality of Linwood, the institution, is a character, and a character trait is manipulation, then it's very easy to say that anything that happens outside of their expectations or their control, they don't like.
Yes.
So someone finding it accidentally breaks Linwood's vision of self-importance.
Yeah, because it also goes back to the gentlemanly nature of the original competition, right? Which is like, we always have a winner, and the winner is always respectful. You know,
Right.
where it's, oh, that didn't happen. This completely undermines all of our core values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's get some of the like the entry level stuff, semantic stuff out of the way. The money situation.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think we had tossed some numbers around. I like how we're acting like this is a real competition here in which there are, crazy prizes. But
Yeah.
I think in order for this to feel airtight to a viewer, it needs to feel airtight to us. And I think we're probably a little bit more meticulous than maybe the average viewer.
Yeah.
But thinking about, I believe we said like in the last episode that it was $100,000 entry and then 500 teams, 50 mil,
Right.
but they walk away with 10. It just it didn't feel like enough for the incumbent to really gain a huge leg up. Obviously $10 million is a lot of money, but taking place every 4 years, it didn't seem like it would be enough to cause this company to really rise dramatically above the rest.
Right. Okay, so I took that note from you, and here's the numbers that I think make sense, okay?
Okay.
The entrance fee at $100,000 I think is still good.
Yeah, it's attainable.
Yes. Attainable.
I mean,
guess.
that's like a day's work for
yeah,
me.
no, it's like
I know it's like
take
your life
money out of
savings.
what?
What?
It's like take money out of your retirement account, like do a reverse mortgage on your house, or it's this amount of money where like a retired private investigator could find an entrance or something. And then let's say that there are 1,000 slots, which basically we do have the choice of making it an auction where it could go above 100,000, or making it a raffle where there's just this limited number of slots that get either like a merit-based application process or just a random process, and then you just have to pay the entrance fee if you're selected. But either way, that would net $100 million. And let's just say the Linwood splits that 50-50, so that Linwood has $50 million every, I think we're saying 4 years.
Yeah, I think
right?
4 years is right.
Yeah, I like that 4 years helps with the comparison to the Olympics that I think that we're clearly willing to criticize. And then $50 million in profit for the contestant, which is pretty life-changing and massive.
I think a completely randomized raffle is better than a merit-based application, because I actually think, I mean, either way, it kind of results the same outcome, but I think in the theme of manipulation, by having this seemingly super lucky giveaway of an entrance, they're actually able to decide who it is that they want. It may seem just completely randomized, but it doesn't have to be by any means. And that's something that they can always just kind of ensure that they are getting their competitors that they think really represent the Linwood brand.
Yeah, and I think that from Linwood's perspective, sorry, this is just another, it's a satirization of the American dream and the meritocracy. And if you work hard, you can achieve it. Like the fact that Linwood depicts winning the treasure as attainable, but ultimately it's just devolved into a resource intensive. You just have to outspend your competitors. But they hold on to this idea that it's meritocracy, and if you randomly get picked, then it's a little Willy Wonka style. Um, so yeah, I think let's say 1,000 tickets, random raffle. Anyone who wants to can be in the raffle, and um, then you have to pay your $100,000 entrance fee. However, keep in mind that someone could, even though it's not an auction, someone could sell their entrance or get other investors to join them once they win a ticket. So Joe Schmo could apply, win the raffle,
and then get staked another million from some
investor.
Yep.
There's still more that can be done with this basic structure of raffle, entrance fee, winning.
Okay, so now this is going to open a discussion that I was thinking a lot about. So bear with me for a second. But the reason I think of this is because one of the teams that I could imagine would be a national team. So some government from some country has found out about this and is willing to, just like the Olympics, go and send their athletes, their brightest and best stars to enter this competition, right? But where this then spawned for me, or what the discussion that spawned for me afterwards was, given this is an international competition, why would governments allow this to happen without any sort of involvement themselves?
I guess that didn't really come to mind for me necessarily, that the government relationship to the treasure hunt, just because I don't know how they're involved in the conflict. My assumption was just that the winners pay their taxes. The Linwood itself is probably based in the Cayman Islands or something, so they don't have to, and it's just sort of shadowy. Um, but I would think that almost the different countries around the world would almost create an environment friendly to the tourism.
Yeah,
That
that's where I was starting to go as I was thinking about this. For some places they might be thinking, "Oh wow, look at this sudden influx of money to this location." We're now seeing so many people that might come back and spend more money. So it might be almost like a marketing endeavor for some of these places.
well, in a country or a town, or someone could basically make a fake Wikipedia page or something that mistakenly points people towards going there, even though they may not be the next destination on the treasure hunt, on the scavenger hunt, and they've just planted false information to bring tourism to them, and then they're basically getting a leg up over Linwood when it comes to manipulation.
So building off of the government, because I think there were three major entities at play, and I think Linwood is one, which obviously includes the company itself and the contestants. I think the location is another, but I think we had touched on this, and this will probably be maybe one of the final times we touch on this in great detail, is media. So we've already completely established and agree on no audience, right? But what do you imagine is the sort of media coverage about this? You know, it's sort of, to me, a little bit more tangible than the conspiracy theories that you'll see online about these organizations and the small things that they do. But what I imagine more is and us being film people, when you look at an agency's website, right, or a production company's website, a lot of the time all they'll have is their name and then like a phone number, an email, or a mailing address.
Yes.
And that's the only way that you get any information about them. You don't really have any other there's no other aspects of them except how they are depicted in the media, right? By oh, this agency just signed this person. So for me, I feel like that's what would make more sense of how the media covers this, because I don't envision there's any sort of television aspect to it whatsoever. There's no real way to track the contest in real time. And I was wondering if that's kind of the same
Yeah.
thing you're feeling.
No, I think that I feel pretty strongly that it's not a secret that it happens at all. I think that it's pretty obvious and clear, but it's not something that many people follow, or there's not much coverage about, just because there's not a real time spectacle element to it, just because of the incentive structures of the secretive nature, where if someone spots a team member in another country, I mean that's a huge clue, and that's why some team members maybe will just go send red herrings out around the world. And so there's probably there's probably a subreddit, there's probably like a Twitter rumor mill, but it's not a spectacle. And there's probably like indie documentaries on it. There's probably like CNN profiles or 60-minute interviews with people. That there's gonna be coverage because it's interesting, and particularly around the narrative of potential like scholarship team or coverage of the incumbent's operation. I totally can visualize like the little cheesy exposition news story that the film opens with, where there's this expose that covers the incumbent, that covers, so and so has won every year, and then so and so is just in it for the sport of it. And there's definitely good storytelling around this. It's exciting, and I'm not going to pretend like people would be interested in following the story idea, but just because of the nature of where the whole movie's going to spend its time, like embedded in these teams, the media just can't participate too deeply in that process. It wouldn't really work. Think about like international relations. Like, we know, oh, so and so's meeting with so and so, but these are all closed door meetings because there's state secrets and negotiations. And
Yeah, you only see the baseline, the headline of like, oh, this meeting took place and they talked about this,
yeah,
but that's all we get to know.
yeah, but we don't actually get to see the 007 going to do the actual espionage missions. That stuff happens all the time, and it gets reported on 40 years later.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we can't have media, even though spies are interesting, we can't have media coverage of spy operations in the world.
So Linwood is known to those who want to look for it or have like heard little bits about it, or like you're saying, seen these small little documentaries. It's popular enough where there are plenty of entrants, especially wealthier people who, have the capital outright to go in and immediately try to enter that raffle. But it's not like a Netflix series in which everybody's going to be talking about it, or like the Olympics or the World Cup when it happens, everybody's glued trying to see what happens. It's, if you notice it, you notice it. If you know where to find information on it, there's going to be a highlight reel at the end of, who won or whatever it is, but not much more than that.
Yeah. So I'm comfortable leaving it at that for now.
Awesome. So I think the final thing for this episode, and this is something that will definitely be more developed once we have the characters in mind as well. But for now, I think we can get a very loose baseline structure of how the competition itself works, in the sense that kind of how many clues, where we're heading, what we're looking to do, and anything that would contribute to the actual treasure hunt in its entirety. So for me, I feel like part of it needs to be a set number of clues, obviously, and a mix of physical and intellectual challenges.
I always imagined it as you have to solve one clue and get to a location to find the next clue that takes you to the next location. And I know that's sort of what you imagine the treasure hunt to be, as decoding clues to like, it's nice if it's cumulative, where like you get different materials from each successive thing, where you can't skip the line.
Yeah.
You have to keep finding these pieces. But because of the number of contestants, it can't quite be like a National Treasure.
This
I'm
is
so sorry for bringing this up. That like this is a fair reference, but
we talk about National Treasure a lot.
well, the people decided that's what they wanted.
Oh, you just had to bring that in here, huh? The people.
The people decided to make the National Treasure meet. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So we can't have in National Treasure. There's like artifacts that not in Indiana Jones too. There's artifacts that you find, and these like physical artifacts are necessary in order to decode successive clues. But we do need, this is like a longer logistical challenge of like, if that would be a winner take all, where if someone got this like essential artifact, it would deprive all the other teams of it. And this is where you have this like direct violence
Right.
where,
And this is something too that, like, as you were talking, I'm just thinking about what is, or what are the clues? Because if the clues are a piece of paper, right, and they're being handed out at some place, what is stopping some team from just like taking the whole stack of papers, or if it's like written on a wall somewhere, just trying to cover it up, make it impossible for
yeah,
future competitors, or if it's, if somebody, it's an actual local of the area who's responsible for giving the clue, and it's an oral clue, and one of them could literally just send them out to pasture, and make them disappear.
yeah.
Where how do we keep it so that the treasure hunt can keep going for any contestant who arrives at that place?
So my first impression, I've not thought this far ahead. My first impression is that some of that can be okay just because Linwood might be all right inviting people to get their hands dirty and creating some chaos in the system. And it's not just this puzzle that you can board yourself up in a house and solve, right? All the way to completion, just to the final coordinates to where to go dig it out from the ground, and that's the only physical component. But also, there's like some practicality there, and like I know that like we're gonna have to do some creative um, planning, and I think it'd be tacky just to create rules around it. Like, please don't scratch this out on the wall.
Yeah.
Don't scratch out this clue that's written on this wall. No, it can't be something like that.
Yeah. But I think even going back to what you're saying about the Wikipedia page by that other town, I feel like diversion tactics would be utilized in mass by all of the competitors, just trying to throw them off the scent of the trail in whatever way they can.
Yeah. But as for the actual the mechanisms, I mean, I think that's something that we're gonna work on a lot off camera and bring ideas. And I almost feel like, I don't know, the way that we write that, we basically do the storytelling we want and sort of reverse engineer the clues so that we can justify sort of moving from this location to the next, and well, what do we want to happen just in our like rising and falling action. And
I think what might be beneficial for us is to just write this without any specific locations in mind. Just know that we're going to be moving from town to city to whatever. And then setting that in specific locations in which one, our guest writers can help us really make lively and accurate to those locations, or things that we do a tremendous amount of research off camera into to make sure that it is relevant and accurate for those places. But I think trying to write for specific locations at first, we're probably not going to actually achieve the proper sort of storytelling we're going for.
yeah, well, we probably need to make decisions of like, all right, well, from when we move from this clue to this clue, we want this team to basically drop out of the race.
Right.
We can make some of those structural decisions to kind of sketch that all out, because we can't hide how the movie ends
Yeah.
on the show. So we're gonna spoil the ending. We can't do this thing in chronological order, you guys. So I think that we need to just figure out, what would be the satisfying ending. Do we want the incumbent to like be their team to be weaned out over time? What resources do they have? And this will all be sort of a process of circling back and
Yeah, I think
editing.
I think we're gonna end up doing all of the arc planning and then come back at the end and just actually put the color to it, and that color being the specific places in which this takes place. But everything else will be just the bare bones of the actual clues and the different ideas in which they might have to do. So, this one's a physical challenge in this way or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so let's maybe recap some of these specifics.
So we've discussed a lot here today, and I think for the beginning of next episode, what I'm going to go home and do for my homework is design a timeline from the inception of Linwood Co., including the founder, whoever this Linwood is, up until present day, this actual treasure hunt that we're looking at.
Okay.
And then in between that, I'll give, short little benchmarks of, okay, this game master changed here, but pretty decent amount of detail, not like a crazy biography of this company of 200 years. And then once we have that timeline, I'll have the names and everything, and we can decide whether or not we want to soft lock anything or rethink it right there.
Okay. So just do some specifics off camera.
Yeah, I think we'll get into the specifics off camera, and I think next week that'll be how we open up the episode. We'll look through the timeline, and then we'll move to what I believe is going to be the incumbent. So for those of you listening on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, be sure to check out the YouTube video for episode 4, because we will have a nice little timeline for you to actually see the history unfold on screen.
Yeah. And probably on our Instagram if you go follow us there.
Definitely.
And I think that unless we change our mind, the next episode will be getting into the incumbent, just because they are such a important figure in our story.
Yeah. And I think after that, once we have our antagonist, we'll move into our protagonist. And then from there, we really are already chugging along.
Yeah.
After that, I think we can get into something like an opening sequence.
The hard work. Yeah.
Right into the fun stuff.
Some test scenes.
If there are any movie recommendations, TV shows, pieces of music, anything that really strikes you as an audience that you think would be relevant to us, please send it our way. We're always happy to indulge in a new piece of art and then find a way to incorporate it in whatever way.
Yeah, because if there's something that we really think is a good candidate, we could just do sort of a book club, watch along episode.
Yeah, we watch a lot of stuff. So
yeah,
all of it one way or another finds a way to influence what we do.
If you rewatch a movie and you have a different read on it,
yeah,
will you update your Letterboxd score?
Every time.
You will. You will.
Oh, wait, let's do a Letterboxd plug. I don't actually know my Letterboxd username.
It's just at Jackson Casimiro on Letterboxd.
Oh, this makes sense. I'm at Smail III on Letterboxd.
It's the same as our Instagrams.
Oh, perfect.
God, now I'm going to have to defend I rate a lot of things 3.5 stars. That's pretty default for me.
I'm 4, which is probably high.
Yeah.
But I like a lot of movies.
Let's have a Letterboxd live stream or extravaganza special episode.
I'm down. But yeah. I definitely...
live stream? Roast my Letterboxd.
Oh, mine would be bad.
No, for our viewers. Let's roast our viewers.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Send your Letterboxd in the comments and we'll tuck it away for our Letterboxd roast.
We'll tear it apart. Don't you worry.
Yeah. Please, someone make a whole meme Letterboxd account with Air Bud and Outer Banks and all the meme shows we've mentioned.
We need to find a way to incorporate Air Bud into every episode.
Yeah. There's no magical realism. This is not fantasy and Linwood Treasure Co. But there is one talking dog in this alternate universe.
100%. So feel free in the comments. Any movie that you love, I don't care if it has nothing to do with this, I'll watch it.
Yeah. Any treasure hunt. We should watch every treasure hunt movie.
There's this movie about this dog.
No, stop.
This podcast is going to last 5 episodes.
Oh, my God.
They're going to strangle me with my headphone cord.
Well, thank you so much for watching this 3rd episode of Plot Matrix. Our show comes out every single Thursday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And you can engage with us directly in the comment section on YouTube or in the DMs, in the comments on our Instagram at Plot Matrix. Your hosts are us, Jackson Casimiro, and Brian Smail III. And this is a production of Lunation Lab. Learn more at lunationlab.com.
See you next Thursday.